Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, Robert Schultz.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Happy to have you. You have... this is something I'm really trying to actually do now, is I see people post on Twitter about movies all the time.
Yeah.
I follow a lot of comics who are... going to see movies, that's what we do, and people talk about a movie that they didn't like, and I'm like, I want to try and jump on it. I feel like I got to be a little bit more current every once in a while.
Yeah.
And you posted about hating this movie, Ad Astra.
I think that my joke was, I really love smart, highbrow science fiction like Ad Astra that dares to ask the big question, like, who is this for and why did this get made?
Yes. And then I saw that and I was like, oh, I gotta get in there.
Yeah.
Gotta see what this is all about.
Yeah.
And now I get to see what's in there and what it's all about.
Yeah.
You hated Ad Astra.
It's one of those things where it's like, I hated it more after.
Okay.
Because while it's happening, like, it's like, this is like, it does fit into that kind of smart, highbrow kind of science fiction where it's presented in such a sophisticated way where you get the sense that it's building to something very sophisticated. And then it ended and I just kind of felt myself feeling like nothing.
Oh.
Like,
yeah.
I felt myself almost like, it's that it presents itself as like a serious science fiction movie. And I'm like, I feel like I felt more emotionally after like the Star Wars prequels, or like take any bad science fiction movie, and I think that it presents itself as more than it actually is.
Interesting. Yeah, well, because it's this movie, if you haven't seen it yet, it's a movie, it's still out in theaters probably. I would imagine it's not going anywhere for a little while. 2019 American sci-fi adventure film produced, co-written, and directed by James Gray, starring Brad Pitt, Tommy Lee Jones, Ruth Negga, Liv Tyler, and Donald Sutherland, follows an astronaut who goes into space in search of his lost father, whose experiment threatens the solar system. It's a very existential sci-fi movie.
Yes.
It feels very old school because the whole thing is really slow. There's a couple sequences of like action-y fighting kind of things, but they're clearly not the centerpiece of the movie. It's very much... Do you ever see 2001?
No, I have not.
Okay.
But it's more in that vein?
It's more in that vein. 2001 is on the opposite. It's like, if we're talking like kind of sci-fi, 2001 is on the complete opposite scale from my mind as Star Wars is.
Yeah.
Star Wars is sci-fi for the masses. It's sci-fi for the people. 2001 is sci-fi for pretentious nerds.
Yes.
Which I like both. I'm cool with either end of the spectrum. Ad Astra is definitely more on that side of things. And because of that, it's certainly not a movie that's going to be everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw you post about it, I hadn't even thought about going to see this movie.
Yeah.
Because it's the kind of movie where I'm like, all right, I'll see it if I'm like somebody proposes it to me.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go out and seek this movie out. I'm not much of a sci-fi person in general. What drew you to the movie? Did you watch trailers or why did you even wind up there?
See it? Well, you know what it was? It was because I saw I wouldn't have seen it.
Okay.
But I think it's a combination of, like, there's not a lot of other movies out that I was interested in.
Okay.
Like, I don't particularly care about The Joker. I didn't particularly care about Downton Abbey because I've never seen the show, and that's really it.
Yeah.
So, and then I read a review of it. I saw that Ad Astra's got like an 80% or something on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's doing well. It's got, I think it might even be higher than that. Let me take a look.
It's getting good reviews.
83%.
But yeah, and I read a review that like one line stuck out. I wish I could credit who wrote it, but find them on Rotten Tomatoes. They said, like, there's a lot of movies of just sad middle-aged men looking out the window, like sad about their dads, and this is the best version of that type of movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, normally I'm not into those kind of like existential type movies, but I figured I would just, that was enough. And then I saw it, and
it didn't do the thing for you.
it didn't do the thing for me. It frustrated me after. Because I think I felt the whole way, I thought it was building to something like interesting and subversive. But it is like, can we spoil it? I'm assuming we can spoil it.
Yeah, we can spoil galore.
Yeah, it is like the whole thing about, well, he's going to go see his dad.
Yep.
And then it's like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen when he gets to see his dad. Then he kind of just gets to his dad. They have like a very nothing interaction. And then the dad kills himself, but it's like...
But the dad almost makes Brad Pitt kill him in a way. Which is... but that's the thing, it's like... It's very on the nose.
Yes.
The whole movie is a movie where you have Brad Pitt doing narration, explaining how he's feeling on the inside, and talking a lot of existential things and saying stuff like, on the face, Brad Pitt's character is this guy, top line astronaut.
Yeah.
It's set in the near future, right? It even says it right from the jump. So, clearly stuff's been going on. Space travel has evolved to a point where there's more people doing it. They have all of these protocols in place where he's doing like, oh, okay, you got to do a psychological test before you go out, and they're going to record all of it.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt has clearly gotten very good at being detached.
Yes.
And not worrying about, and not even not worrying, not being in touch with his emotions.
And yeah, they even say a thing, I think, early on. They're like a commanding officer says, your heart rate has never gotten above like an 86.
Right.
So even on like disastrous space falls, he's always like he's like a sociopath, basically.
And you see that at the very beginning of the movie when the power surge happens and the antenna explodes.
Yeah.
And everybody's falling and freaking out, and Brad Pitt's just like, all right, I'm gonna get blown off this antenna.
Yep.
All right, here we go. And I'm out.
And we're done. But it's that for the whole movie. And I think that I think that I in the audience was like almost like matching his emotional level, which was a 0. Because there's like during that like fight scene on the moon, there's a fight scene on the moon where it's like this, what should be a great action sequence, but even then Brad Pitt is just very monotone, like, oh, he's dead.
Right.
That's a picture of his family. Oh, there's more. Shot a man in the chest. And now we're moving on to the next scene.
Right.
And it's just kind of like very steady, like mirroring his character.
It's played, all of the dialogue from Brad Pitt, and really from like every character.
Yeah.
Even the emotional stuff is played, it's all internal.
It's all very kind of muted. Like people are like all their emotions are kept on the inside.
Well, they even have a point midway through the movie, which I think makes a lot of sense, where you see that all the astronauts are being given mood stabilizers. And all the astronauts are super excited to get these mood stabilizers.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, give me the pills, give me
Yeah.
the candy. And Brad Pitt doesn't take his.
Yeah.
And you're like, uh-oh, Brad Pitt's going to start going off the rails here.
Yeah.
But even him going off the rails is...
His eyes are like slightly whiter sometimes.
Right. He's into the room where it's all birds and stuff all the time, and they're freaking out by him like beating on the walls as like flowers and orchestral music are playing.
Yeah.
It's very much a non-factor.
Yeah, like Brad Pitt's emotional high of the movie is that moment when he's in those rooms with all the flowers, like the comfort zones, and he just exhales and lays down.
Right.
And that's as animated as he gets until like the very, very end.
Yes. I couldn't decide whether or not he was doing a good or bad acting job. Because it doesn't seem like it requires a whole lot. Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I was thinking about that the whole time.
You can tell in that movie that he is acting and doing a good job of it.
Yeah.
He's more than just the guy with his shirt off. He's more than just tan Brad Pitt wearing sunglasses. He's got something going on.
He's got like a personality and a backstory and like a perspective. Yeah, and neither role is particularly emotional. Like even in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like he's not like he's not even on the surface much more animated,
right?
But I think that he expresses himself in a much more interesting way.
Right.
Whereas in Ad Astra, I think his whole character is he never expresses his real emotions, so it's tough to judge.
Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you can feel the sadness because of the way he is, of his surroundings, right? you can tell, oh, he's trying his best, but he's like a guy living in a trailer behind a drive-in theater with a dog.
Yeah.
This is his entire life.
Yeah.
In Ad Astra, you can't really tell because you see all these flashbacks of like him with his ex-wife and
Liv
him,
Tyler.
Yeah.
Getting
Showing
money.
back up.
She's
Good
back,
job,
baby.
Liv.
She's back for 45 seconds of dialogueless screen time.
It's all it takes. You get, and she barely even has to act opposite Brad Pitt. It's mostly just like either them lying in bed, and I don't think they're even facing each other.
They're not. And I think her back is to the camera, and I think that she fades away artistically in the shot.
And then there's her outside the coffee shop at the very end.
At the very end, yeah.
And then also her doing a FaceTime where she's like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But this is Brad Pitt's movie, and Brad Pitt it's like I said, it's hard to tell because like I walked away from this movie, I liked it, but I am trying to think of now I'm sitting here, I'm like, did I like the trappings of the movie, or did I also appreciate what Brad Pitt was doing? Because I will say I liked Tommy Lee Jones better than Brad Pitt.
You know what?
As a character.
I think that's definitely true. And I think Brad Pitt did a good acting job of playing what to me is not a particularly interesting character to follow.
Right.
Because I like the character is like very emotionless and detached, and that's the whole character. And then at the end, I think the idea is, oh, well, he's ready to kind of reconnect with the real world and like reconnect with his wife.
Right.
So I get that through line.
Right.
But I think that's just there is very little for him to do, but I think he does it very well.
Right, because Brad Pitt's been around the block a number of times. Brad Pitt is definitely not an actor who's bad at his job.
Yeah.
But he's not the most... You know what it is he's not the most interesting character in the movie.
That's the problem. And he is also basically he's literally in every single scene. So he's not the most interesting character in the movie, but even the more interesting characters they kind of come and go.
Right. I really liked the lady who's the head of the Mars base.
I thought she was very interesting.
She's a very interesting character. The old captain who sort of ushers him and escorts him from Earth to the moon, Donald Sutherland. What was his name in the movie? Corporal something?
Colonel
Plitt. Colonel Pruitt. There we go.
Pruitt.
But but Tommy Lee Jones is the most interesting character in the movie, I think.
Yeah.
Because you really hope that he's not doing something bad, and then you're led to believe like, oh, he probably did some bad stuff, and then you're like, well, he exists in a gray area, like he had to do this stuff,
and then you find out he did some really bad stuff,
right?
And then, you also always get the sense of where he's coming from, because he like makes his like in his like even those messages that he sent out. The first one that he sends to Brad Pitt, where he's just all good and like we're doing God's work and it's amazing,
right?
And the second one that's kind of revealed to Brad Pitt, where he talks about how people tried to mutiny him, and so he shut out life support to like a chunk of the space station.
It's like, oh God,
yeah,
he is the villain.
Yeah, and then you get almost a sense like at the end, like when Brad Pitt does confront him, where like Tommy Lee Jones almost seems to, the feeling I got where it's like, oh, he recognizes that he did so many bad things that he can't give up his mission because then all the bad things he did were in vain.
Right.
Which I think is very interesting.
Yeah. That end monologue is my favorite part of the movie, where Tommy Lee Jones is like, yeah, I never cared about you or your mom.
Oh yeah,
I didn't care about any of that.
When he's like, I never once thought about home. It's
yeah.
like, oh, and I've been alone for 30 years on this space station, and I never once thought about home.
Right.
And all Brad Pitt's thought about is like his dad.
That's and there's parts in the script where you get to see Brad Pitt, or you don't get to see him. You hear him with the narration saying things like, I can't wait for my isolation to be at its end. And you find out that Brad Pitt and his dad are different. Yeah. That's the real end of the movie, is like, oh, Brad Pitt he thinks he's like his dad and he wants to be like his dad, and then he turns out to not be like his dad, and that's the hardest thing for him to grapple with.
Yeah.
Is his dad not being the person who built him up to be in his whole head.
Yeah, but then almost like with that comes like the relief of like, oh, he's almost been trying to be his dad, and then he sees what his dad has become, and I think he even says like, I don't want to be my father.
Right.
And then after the whole interaction with his father at the end, he's like, I can't wait for my isolation to be at an end.
But the problem with not wanting to be your dad is that your dad's the more interesting character.
It's the more
in the
interesting
movie.
character. Like, I almost feel like as we're talking about this, like, it does sound very interesting.
It
Like,
does.
The arc is very interesting, but it's presented in such a muted way.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I wanted more out of the final interaction with his dad. 'Cause
Right.
The whole movie is building up to, I'm going to get back to my dad. I'm going to see him at the edge of the solar system on Neptune or whatever.
Right.
And then they got there, and it once again, kind of like everything else, is kind of a very muted back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
except for Tommy Lee Jones saying he never thought about home. But even then, Brad Pitt doesn't really respond to that in that
Right.
moment. Brad Pitt kind of sees Tommy Lee Jones, kind of stares at him, gets a little teary-eyed,
Mm-hmm.
and never really expresses himself. Like, I wish there was almost like, kind of like at the end of Kill Bill, you know, I know I'm jumping around, where it's like the whole movie is built up between the bride and Bill facing them.
Yeah.
And then when they do, they have a real conversation and they exchange their perspectives.
Right.
Whereas in this movie, it's all built to Brad Pitt and his dad, and there's no exchange of perspective. It's kind of
Right.
like Tommy Lee Jones just letting you know where he's at, and Brad Pitt kind of like solemnly staring
Right.
and then going about his business.
And it's Brad Pitt, you know, he's there with his mission, which he's going to stick to.
yeah.
Which is, I got to get my dad out of here. I got to get my dad home. And then the secondary mission is, I also have to blow up the, what was it? It's not Project ISIS, is it? It's something else.
Something.
The Lima Project.
The Lima Project.
So he has to blow up the Lima Project ship because that's continuing to send the things into Neptune. I will say, I do appreciate that they got the barest amount of science exposition in and didn't do the thing that I hate in sci-fi movies where it's like we have to overly explain everything because we assume the audience is not going to understand. Just I like that they're like, you know what, you don't need to really understand a whole lot of things. Just we're gonna get it out and we'll just let you fill in the gaps of anything that you are questioning.
I even like how early on they do say, like, just very casually, like, oh yeah, we're going to get you to the moon, but the mission's kind of secret, so we're going to have you fly commercial.
Yeah.
They don't make a big thing. It's just like, oh, we're going to have to fly commercial. So it's kind of just those little moments of world building.
Right.
Are great.
I was talking to somebody else about this, and they were like, I wish that it was more fantastic. I was like, I kind of like that it was a mundane sci-fi movie.
Yeah, it was. You know what? It's crazy because like it is mundane, but then when it does have those moments of, I guess more like typical genre moments, those kind of tend to pop more.
Yeah.
Like, again, they have a laser gun moon rover battle.
Right.
But even but they present it in like this very grounded way.
Yeah, it's this thing where they're like, the space pirates.
Oh,
They're coming
it's
back.
That Brad Pitt is like, oh, they're here. Oh,
Yeah.
they're coming.
Well,
you guys seeing this?
We knew this could happen.
Okay.
All right. Do we have the blasters? Oh, we lost our guys.
We lost our guys.
Man.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Well,
My heart rate is not above 60.
my heart rate's still pretty low. And okay, now to the next scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would rather have that's the real downside is his largest character trait is like how calm and cool and collected he is.
Yeah.
And when even in stressful situations, I would like to have seen the cracks of that show up earlier than almost halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
If Brad Pitt's not taking his mood stabilizers earlier, then I think the entire level of care that we have for his character changes, because then he starts freaking out, and the moon rover sequence, instead of just being like,
Okay.
the guy got shot in the head,
in the face, and Brad Pitt literally just very casually tosses him out the driver's seat.
right,
Which was kind of cool.
Sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
But that's even him clearly doing a dumb thing, like going and climbing onto a rocket, which, by the way, doesn't make sense that he was able to get in as quick as he was. But I'm also cool with the fact that they're like, yeah, Brad Pitt's a great astronaut, and he figured out how to do it.
The movie is so grounded in so many different ways, but it will do stuff like, well, okay, Brad Pitt's going to swim up to a launching rocket and just kind of climb through.
Right.
Like, I think in the movie, he's hanging onto it outside of a rocket when it initially launches, and then he climbs in.
Right. After swimming through Martian sewer water.
Yeah.
Which also they're like, yeah, Mars has water.
Yeah. Which is it's a beautiful sequence. It's visually beautiful, but it's also like just 3 minutes of Brad Pitt dead silent, no facial expression, just moving slowly in the dark.
Right. It's a wonderful thing in this movie when exciting stuff happens because the rest of the movie is so flat.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna bring this up because this is the one part of the movie where I'm like, all right, we're gonna talk about the monkeys, right?
Oh, we got to talk about the monkeys. We got to talk about the space monkeys that can breathe in zero oxygen environments.
Oh yeah, and did I say this was a grounded movie? It is, except for the clearly computer-generated killer space monkeys.
Right. That's the weirdest part of the whole movie.
They answer a distress signal. And they go, Brad Pitt and the captain of the science ship or whatever that he's on, go onto the ship. They can't find anyone. Brad Pitt can't lose his signal with the guy he came on board with. Turns a corner, sees the guy's body like shaking, and then a computer-generated killer monkey has been eating the other guy's face.
Right.
Looks up, sees Brad Pitt, and then Brad Pitt has to fight a killer monkey on a space shuttle.
And it's a pretty exciting sequence.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt is definitely the most freaked out during that whole sequence.
Yeah.
Out of anybody, but even afterwards, when he kills the space monkey by what does he do? He depressurizes the chamber that he's in and makes it explode. I'm like, oh, cool, that's classic space.
I thought he shot it once, and then he does do the old
he does the baby in the microwave thing.
Yeah, he does that. Where it just kind of explodes into blood against the door.
Oh yeah, that's it's space. I get that.
But
but then even after that, you go back to like normal Brad Pitt, where he's like, okay, I got to put duct tape on this helmet now.
Yeah, and he does his psych evaluation thing. And he goes, answer a distress call. It ended in tragedy.
Right.
But he says it so. Oh, it ended in a horrible tragedy.
Yeah, but and that's the thing. You finally start to see the cracks of like, did it though?
Yeah.
But is this? I don't buy it. But the computer should not be the audience surrogate. I would rather actually just see Brad Pitt at that point freaking out. It's the pacing of this movie. I think that's my biggest problem with it. It's like the pacing of the movie is like 2 steps behind where I feel like it would be more emotionally compelling if it was to make. If we're gonna care about Brad Pitt and his arc, it's all just a hair too slow.
The pace of the movie is slow, and it's almost like he goes from not giving a shit about anything to suddenly caring.
Right.
Way too quickly. Like, because he only, I feel like, starts to really display emotion when he sends the message to Neptune on Mars, and they get a message back and don't tell him what it is.
Right.
Then that's where he, like, starts freaking out. But I'm like, I almost feel like he freaks out there. That freak out maybe should have happened earlier, right after the laser fight on the moon, and then have another like heightened freak out after the killer monkey, and then have an even more. So it's gradual instead of just like, a guy on the moon got shot in the face. I shot 2 space pirates in the chest. No big deal. Oh, killer monkey. No big deal. Killed the captain. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Oh, message from my daddy. Now I'm gonna be upset.
Oh.
It's like okay. I felt like there needed to be a heightening as opposed to just a nothing spike.
Right. It's a heart attack.
Yeah.
It's too much too quick.
Yeah.
Instead of it feeling like we've earned the build.
Yeah.
That's we figured it out.
Yeah.
We figured it out. Solved this movie.
Yeah, we solved Ad Astra.
Yeah, we solved it. We beat you, James Gray, person who figured it. I don't know. That's the thing with this. Are you much of a sci-fi fan in general?
Yeah.
What's your sort? You're more in the Star Wars camp generally? What are some of your favorite sci-fi movies?
Let me think off the top of my head. Well, I like Star Trek, and I was a big fan of Star Trek and Star Trek Next Gen.
Okay.
I like the Twilight. I liked like the Twilight Zone.
Gotcha.
Like that kind of like weird type sci-fi. I do like Star Wars, but I almost put Star Wars more in like the fantasy realm, even though I guess that's what I compared it to earlier.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to think. I even like Ex Machina to a certain extent, even though Ex Machina to me, it kind of fell into the same thing of being just like too slow and quiet for its own good.
Okay.
But
I will say, did you see Annihilation?
I did not see Annihilation.
All right. So I'm thinking about this, especially now that you brought up Ex Machina. So I saw Ex Machina and I saw Annihilation. I liked Annihilation better than Ex Machina, which I think puts me in the minority. I feel like a lot of people like Ex Machina more.
You know what? I hear Annihilation is hated by more people, but also the people that like Annihilation tend to like it more. Does that make sense?
Annihilation to me is what's the best way to put this? Ex Machina is interesting, but I feel like I would rather watch Annihilation because there's just something about the level of weirdness in it that adds to, all right, it's more than just a character study.
Yeah.
Ex Machina and Ad Astra are both very much character studies. And Annihilation has plenty of character study stuff in there. Because it's, you're focusing on Natalie Portman, you're focusing on her sort of, losing touch with these other.
I hear there's like wild shit with like people becoming a bear. And crap
my
and all
god,
sorts.
it's great. Yeah, there's a bear monster. There's people turning into plants. There's Oscar Isaac is, you see video of him losing his mind over the course of the movie. Yeah. And the whole end sequence is wild, where she has to fight like an alien. Sort of thing. It's great, but it's because of all of that other weird stuff that adds flavor to the movie in a way where there's still like the level of coldness that Ad Astra has is very much present in Annihilation, because that's sort of what happens, I think, when you tell stories about scientists. They seem to be cold characters, which is what I liked about Arrival and The Martian. Yeah.
Both, because Arrival, I feel like, is also kind of the same thing, where it's like kind of very serious, grounded type sci-fi. But I thought it compensated for that by having very emotional characters.
Right.
Like Amy Adams will get very emotional, so she's not like Brad Pitt, sociopath. And then, what was the second one I literally just said?
The Martian.
The Martian is almost plays against type by making the Matt Damon character like have a sense of humor and be very pragmatic and like express himself in a way, so to keep it interesting.
Right.
Whereas Brad Pitt, it's like you said, it's like it didn't really have enough sci-fi weirdness for me. Even stuff like the laser fight on the moon or the Killer Monkeys, which is kind of an exception.
Killer Monkeys is the closest it gets to being weird sci-fi stuff.
Where it's just like, it's all presented in such a grounded way that I'm just wondering, where does the color come from? Like, where am I supposed to... You know what I mean? Like, where's the emotional blip? I feel like you can keep Brad Pitt stoic and a sociopath.
I'm cool with that.
But let's make the stuff around him a little bit more
because I will say this. One of the other things that I did like about the movie, even if those lines were all read by Brad Pitt in flat Brad Pitt narration monotone for the most part, I did like a lot of the sentiment that he had.
Yes.
I think a lot of those lines, it's like you said from the movie review that you read, where it's like, this is the best version of a guy existentially thinking about his bad relationship with his dad. Like, I like that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of the lines about like being the themes of like being isolated and not really being able to connect with people and figuring out how to break out of that, it's interesting. But it's also, the chief thing of writing is show don't tell, right? There's a lot of telling, and the lines themselves are really nice and beautiful, but we don't ever really get a chance to see that change as fully as we could.
And I also think that might be a function of, and it's one of those things where like I get intellectually what they were going for, but it just ends with the final product that I'm kind of left like ugh about.
Right.
Where it's like, maybe make like the other characters, which are more interesting than Brad Pitt. And I think Tommy Lee Jones is probably an exception, but he's not really in the movie even all that much. Make them interesting, or make them want to connect.
Right.
But instead, even they're all kind of in the same kind of like monotone, detached way, which I guess might be part of what the movie's trying to say. Like, once you get far away from Earth and you get into these kind of like spaces, you kind of lose track of your humanity and you disconnect. I get that. But also I'm like, well, okay, but the end result is I'm just watching a movie where everyone is speaking very kind of monotone and not expressing. Even the person who runs the Mars base, who helps Brad Pitt, she's like, yeah, your dad killed my parents. He killed them both. And Brad Pitt's like, oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna go fix that.
It's
there's no emotion.
There's one character who shows up for just a second in the movie who I wish we found more out about. I wish she became more of a character in the thing, and that's Natasha Lyonne's character. She's also great. We had a movie where as soon as she showed up, I was like, oh man, I hope she becomes a bigger part of this story. And she's not there at all. It's such a shame. Oh, what a shame. She's so great in that one scene.
And we're talking about she's so great. Here's what she does. She checks people into the base.
She
does nothing. She does nothing.
Yeah.
But she does it with a personality where you get the sense like, oh, this character has lived a life before this scene and after this scene.
Right.
Like, and that's what I think is lacking from so many of those characters, where it's just like they're all just kind of like, oh, like very nothing. And even in one scene where plot-wise, again, she does nothing, she pops so much.
Yeah. She's magnetic.
Yeah.
And she's magnetic in a way where obviously she's being she's got that the accent, and she's being very, like robust as a character. And it's magnetic in the almost opposite way of what Tommy Lee Jones, what draws me to him as a character, which is like, oh, you can tell like the menace underneath him. Like he's like, oh, I'm trying to do this for the mission, but you can sense the way he's talking, like he's a fucking sociopath.
Yeah.
Who really doesn't care about anything else.
And I think what helps Tommy Lee Jones, though, and like what helps me connect, is I guess there's the robustness of Natasha Lyonne's character, but I think the other time we see like that level of kind of emotional positivity is in Tommy Lee Jones' first message, the one that Brad Pitt always had, where he's very kind of positive and, oh, we're doing God's work and it's great. I can't wait for you to blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like, and I think that having that dimension makes those characters feel more well-rounded, whereas everyone else, like even Donald Sutherland, is just serious and understated and monotone.
Poor Donald Sutherland too. Very underused.
Yeah.
He shows up, he talks about, oh, I sort of knew your dad.
Yeah.
And then he has a heart attack.
Yeah, like,
and they're like, well,
bye.
Yeah.
And again, like that's the way the movie's structured, is kind of Brad Pitt keeps moving and other characters come in and out. But make those other characters then interesting and make them pop. You know what I mean? Like I think like a Coen Brothers movie or even a Tarantino movie, where as like other characters, like there's all these side characters that'll come into the main plot and they're always very interesting and they have a backstory and they have an attitude and they have an angle. Whereas all the characters in this, with the exception of, I feel like, Natasha Lyonne and Tommy Lee Jones, they come into the story, they're just interchangeable, kind of monotone, emotionally dead people. Right.
Donald Sutherland deserves to be more than just the guy who's like, uh-oh, I'm having heart trouble. Yeah. Here, take this flash drive.
Yeah, and then Brad Pitt even says it in monologue where he's like, he's wondering about Donald Sutherland. And he goes, he's clearly very old. It's like, why does he keep coming out here? Why didn't he just retire? He retired. Why does he keep coming out to space? I'm like, that's a very interesting idea. It's a shame that Donald Sutherland is going to be in this movie for 13 more seconds.
I know. There's one more thing I do want to ask your thoughts about. There's a lot of religious undercurrent in this movie. There's a lot of talk about God. There's a lot of people praying. Did any of that flare up for you as like something that you wish had been more explored, or is it something that you feel like detracted?
You know what? It didn't. It was something I noticed, but it didn't really hugely pop for me. But I did like the idea, and I think it's connected, because we really see the God thing come out of Tommy Lee Jones in a very positive way.
Right.
And then the God thing isn't explicitly mentioned, but there's the idea of Tommy Lee Jones is like obsessed with there's alien life out there. We've got to contact them. Like, and is there life out there? Yes, yes, yes. And the Brad Pitt takeaway at the end is, he does, even inside of Tommy Jones, like, well, the takeaway is we're all we've got.
Right.
So I think that there is definitely probably a religious like allegory there, where it's like Tommy Lee Jones is so obsessed with this idea of like answers from out there, or this other higher consciousness. And Brad Pitt comes to the realization that there is no higher consciousness. There's no point doing horrible things or cutting people off in the interest of finding something that isn't there. We're all we've got. We better make that connection.
Yeah.
I think that definitely it could be. It's definitely probably an argument that kind of seems to push like atheism a little bit.
That's kind of how I felt too. Yeah. I registered it because it came up enough that I was like, oh, this is sort of a theme that gets brought up, but it felt like it never got delved into enough. I wish that some of that stuff had been a little bit more explicit. And not stuff that we just talk about and figure out
one of these
on my
things
couch.
Where, like, as we're talking about it, I feel us making the movie more interesting than I promise it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's definitely really interesting ideas exactly like that are in there.
Right.
So I don't want to like detract from it, but it's just all presented in this way where there's no emotional connection to it. Because that interaction at the end with him and Tommy Lee Jones like could have been a better push-pull. but there's just so much in this movie that is left unsaid, or at least unsaid and unemphasized. I think is probably the better phrase for it.
Right, yeah. It's just kind of, it's the page gets dog-eared in the book, and you're like, all right, come back to that later if you want.
Yeah.
But you're never
I'm not going to come
brought
back to
back.
it.
Of course I'm not going to
You
come
show
back
me
to
a
it.
2-hour movie. Why would I come back to this?
Right.
Because if I want to get to the line where Brad Pitt says, hey, we're all we've got, I've got to sit through 2 hours of Brad Pitt just like mournfully like going through artistic shots in the dark.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing this movie up. I wasn't going to see it. I didn't watch any trailers.
Nobody was going to see it.
And then as soon as you posted something, I was like, all right, I'll bite.
Yeah.
Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, I think that's everyone's attitude on Ad Astra. No one was excited for it. Nobody needed it.
Yeah.
But okay.
It's gotten a lot of, I mean, there's some people who, critically, it's gotten an A from a lot of people. There's also, but Cinema Score gave it a B-. Audience and people walking out, they're like, yeah, it's fine.
That's about what it is.
Yeah.
It's an aggressively just fine movie that could be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be. It's just a little something's missing.
Yeah, it has all the ingredients of a great movie.
Right.
But I don't know. It's just like a little off.
There's just something that's a little off, and I didn't buy it.
Yeah.
Oh, it is what it is.
Well, yeah.
So it goes.
At the end of the day, it is what it is.
If you like sci-fi, if you like Brad Pitt being sad, maybe shedding a tear or two, Ad Astra could be for you.
Yeah.
But if you don't go check it out.
Yeah, if you don't like Brad Pitt being sad, this is not it.
You're not missing out on much.
This is not the stuff.
If you're interested in seeing Brad Pitt be sad, go watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood instead.
Yeah. Go watch him be sad, and then also watch him be happy. They give him more than one emotion to play in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
God, that's nice.
Yeah.
Makes me, I want to see that movie again.
That's a good movie. Yeah. I should have seen that movie again.
It's still in theaters.
I might, yeah.
Might as well. Well, where can the listeners find you if they want to see more you tweeting about movies and other things?
Well, if you want to see me tweeting, go to Twitter. And that's probably the best place. It's _Robert Schultz.
Is there, they didn't have just regular Robert Schultz? It was already taken?
There, yeah.
I buy that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And if you want to follow me, at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com for show dates. If you like the podcast, tell a friend, subscribe, join the Facebook group, follow me on Letterboxd, where I post about movies that I see for this show and for fun, because I still see movies for fun, believe it or not.
That's crazy.
Yeah, right?
Ad Astra isn't one of them.
No, but I did use my AMC Stubbs movie for this week to go see Ad Astra instead of seeing Joker, which I hopefully will be talking about on the show as well.
I'm sure you've got a long line of comedians who have some insane thoughts about Joker.
I actually only one, really. Only one person who I saw, who I've reached out to, who was like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. I was like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, you know what? I bet all the comedians' thoughts on Joker are just they loved it. Oh, they loved it.
I think, well,
Gave them a lot of ideas.
it's a lot of people who are like, I have seen people, this is weird to me, if people buying into the, like, I think there's a narrative that's being pushed in
On Joker?
the
Yeah.
media about Joker, about like, oh, there's all these incels are going to come and shoot theaters up. And I see people tweeting about actually being afraid of that happening. I'm like, you guys, you don't
ridiculous.
need to buy into that.
It's clearly it's a narrative that is not founded in any reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even though, like, the Joker has been in so many movies previously,
Right.
and like none of them, there's been nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very silly. Well, hopefully I can expound on this more on a Joker episode.
Yeah,
so
the
stay
Joker,
tuned.
Sorry, this is the Ad Astra episode.
It's all good. Don't see Ad Astra. Nobody's shooting up theaters during that one.
Oh yeah,
even with laser guns.
If you want to feel totally safe, see Ad Astra. You'll be alone in a movie theater.
I sat next. It was me and one other guy sitting next to me who was like a very jolly dandy man, wearing he had a vest and a purple shirt.
Yeah,
it was like skinny George R.R. Martin a little bit.
I saw it by myself, and like you hear like, oh, if you go by yourself to the Joker, people are like scared of you. I went by myself to Ad Astra. A lot of lonely men in there. That's where the real lonely men are going.
That is where the real lonely men are going.
Yeah. The people go to the Joker to kill everybody else. People go to Ad Astra if they want to kill themselves. Like, that's the difference between the two. And if you walk in with like your significant other to Ad Astra, people look at you like you're a crazy person.
What have you? Why?
What are you doing? You have connections, and you're like, get out! No, go get shot in the Joker. You're done.
What a good way to end the episode.
Go get shot in the Joker.
Get shot in the Joker. Don't see Ad Astra. It's
All right.
more worth your time. This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.